Hello, everybody. This is Kelly Blackman, and you are with us here at How to Win at Everything. Today, we have a great roundtable of guests. We have April Patterson. She is the CEO of ADP. Give it to me again, April.
It's ADP Virtual Assistant.
Okay, great. I didn't want to get it wrong. As a
That's
matter of fact,
okay.
let me do this. Let me have everybody introduce themselves. That way, I won't mess it up. So go right on ahead, guys.
No problem. My name is April Patterson. I'm the CEO of ADP Virtual Assistant, where I provide a 360 platform to businesses, whether you're small, medium, or large. I can actually set you up to be successful at whatever level you're attempting to accomplish.
All right, Michelle, can we go ahead and have you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Taylor Willis. I empower people to empower people. I do that through two venues. I own a media company where we specialize in TV, print, luxury print, radio, and billboards. And we give small businesses a way to advertise to their audiences. And the second way I do that is through a speaking empowerment firm called MTW Enterprises, where I travel around talking about business planning, entrepreneurship, parenting, leadership, sales, and visioning.
All righty. And Devon, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Divan Gamaliel. I'm the founder and CEO of Zapfire with a mission to make hiring fast and fair. So that's what I'm doing right now to make hiring better by using technology. So I recently launched a networking platform. It's like a LinkedIn on videos. I could also call it TikTok for professionals. What would professionals do? But that's what I recently launched. But it's just the first launch of a big plan that we want to transform hiring and our professional networking into videos.
All right. Kanita?
Hi, my name is Kanita Scripsma. I'm the founder and CEO of SEMA Global Consulting, and we are passionate about inclusion and helping individuals live into their best self. So we do that through individual appointments, but group workshops and leadership development in a variety of capacities. I'm also an international speaker and coach and a content creator for Zapfire with Devon. So super excited about that platform. You guys have to check that out.
All righty. And last but definitely not least, Colleen, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know about you.
Hi. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I was a little bit tardy, slow fingers.
Oh, no
Colleen
worries.
McCorrick. I shouldn't have slow fingers. I've been in software development for over 20 years, so I don't know what happened there. My current role is I'm a CTO at a forestry software company, but I sort of moonlight on the side a little bit, and I do consulting and just various business types of business consulting along the way. So that's me.
All righty. So now, everyone, you've met our five guests. Everyone here is an entrepreneur. So the good part is what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about bias. We're going to talk about ours. We're going to talk about others. We have a really good cultural mix of people, so we should be able to really dive into this. But before we do, what I want to do now is start off with my very fun and cheesy intro.
Have you ever wondered why you struggle to find success or fulfillment or lasting happiness? It's probably because your default wiring is set to lose. The How to Win at Everything podcast looks at real people who have struggled with the same insecurities, fears, doubts, and expectations and found a way to succeed. Why? Their brains are rewired for success. We dive into their thought patterns to show you how to rewire your own brain to win at everything.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So I want to dive right in because this is there's a lot to it, right? So let's first kind of define what we're talking about today when we're talking about implicit bias. So
Kelly, hold on a second. It's kind of a weird connection that we have. We could barely hear you. You're kind of choppy.
oh, get out of here. Okay, and give me just a sec.
That's actually better, whatever you're doing.
All right, which is odd. I haven't done anything. Oh, you know what? Does somebody have two devices going? We may be getting some feedback from that. So if anyone could just mute their second device. All right, let's give it a try and see what happens here. So I want to jump right in and kind of give an idea about what we're talking about today as far as implicit bias. We're really going to be talking about this idea of uh, things that show up as bias, but that aren't necessarily intentional, things that we don't necessarily recognize or know right up front. And I want to dive right in, but asking the panel if everyone can give me maybe an idea of a time where they face this, because from all of our previous conversations, we know that this is something that has come up several times. So let's go around the clock. Go clockwise from what I'm looking at. So, April, can you start us off? Give us an example of a time where you've experienced this bias.
I would say being a Black woman who is articulate, I have definitely experienced that, whether it be um, I maybe had a telephone interview and then ended up, getting pushed to the last round where there's an in-person interview, and it was like, oh. That
Gotcha.
was, it's always interesting at this point, at phase in the game. It doesn't bother me, but obviously, in my younger years, it was kind of like, huh, I wonder why that was such a for that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, how about you? Have you experienced this?
You know what? It's interesting. I can't recall a specific situation. I just remember being in situations thinking, did they just say that because I'm a woman? Like, do they just assume that I wouldn't fit the bill because I'm a
Mm,
girl, right? And it's
Mhm.
happened a few times, but to be honest, Kelly, it hasn't happened enough for me to be for it to have hit me long enough for it to
sure.
settle, right? I just remember having those
That
thoughts, but
feeling.
it's perfect, right? Because to your question, it's like, it's kind of like this underlying thing. And I do recall a couple of times where I would joke with, because my managers or my bosses were always men. So I would
Yeah.
kind of joke with them and I'll be like, did you say that because I'm a chick or just because you don't
Yeah.
think I like football? Which one is it? Pick one.
Mm.
And so we kind of go down that road, but I haven't been, where it's been, explicit, so to speak. So
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Here, how about you, Colleen? How have you experienced this?
Go off mute here. I have a very specific and like almost a visceral reaction
Hmm.
to this topic. So I'm a CTO and I do a lot of hiring for the company that I work for. And this one time we were interviewing this individual, and it just so happened that we had another male programmer that reported to me into the interview as well, because we wanted to make sure that the candidate was a fit and they would get along with each other and that they really understood what he was being hired for, what role he was being hired for. So I did most of the talking and I was asking the questions. And then the two of them started talking about, or I was trying to explain actually what role he would be filling. And my colleague jumped in and tried to explain. And as they were both talking to each other, I realized like they're like two ships passing in the night. Like one thinks they're saying one thing, like they think they're coming together, but they were totally not. And I'll never forget it. The candidate turns and looks at me and he says, "Finally, somebody who knows what they're talking about."
Mm,
And I
mm.
was like I'm probably all flushed about it just thinking about it. I wanted to like flip a table on him. I was so mad that I just kind of was like, yeah, okay, like we're kind of done here. So that's mine. But I think it goes to being just underestimated, I guess, is what it
Sure.
comes down. Yeah.
Sure. Devon, how about you?
I think every day I see it. Um, I have an Indian first name, Jewish last name. I look black, brown. I go to Cuba. They think I'm Cuban. I go to Bahamas. They think I'm Bahamian. I go to Morocco. They think I'm Moroccan.
Sure.
So I think people make. I mean, it has positive and negatives, right? I think we complain about bias when we have a negative impact, but I enjoy the benefit of it if it gives positive impact, right? So I think, living through that shoes every day, I have to take a check on when am I complaining, right? I had a situation. I was in Walgreens. I think I was alone. There was a Caucasian woman in front, an old woman. She was tightening a bag, thinking that I'm going to steal it, right? I'm like, oh, now I know what every African American young man or woman or anyone is facing it, because I can live through the journey, right? I get frisked at airports quite often, right? Not anymore. After all the terrorist attacks, they think they look at someone else with a different name. But
Sure.
before 9/11, I would be a common target of being frisked, right? So I think I'm coming to a work culture, and I think my name sounds different. I think when they speak to me on the phone, they think at it differently. When I'm in person, they get impressed. So it all depends on how you look at bias differently. If you're on top of the game, doesn't matter what your race is, right? If you're on top of the game, people will just respect you, right? So it all depends on where you're in your career, how you're performing things. Bias can impact you at different levels. That's my experience.
Okay. And Kanita, go ahead and
Hey,
let us know how
thanks.
you've seen it.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Similar to Devon, that I have an Indian first name and a Dutch last name because I married into that. And often when I walk into a room or as a speaking guest, I've on many occasions had somebody say, well, you don't look Dutch. And so I sometimes, depending on my mood, I'll say, oh, really? Don't tell anybody. I didn't know, or don't let the last name fool you. I'm not Dutch. So kind of just breaking the ice, I think, has been really a good experience for me when it comes to bias. But for me, I can have a phone conversation with somebody, but then when it's a face-to-face, like April was saying earlier, there's a, oh, and it's like, what are you reacting to? And I've asked them on different occasions, and they'll say, well, you didn't have an accent, so I really didn't know that you were Indian. And so it's part of that's like, how's that even fair? Anyways, but I like Devon as well. I can be in different places and be considered already part of that culture. So there's some comfort to having those biases, I guess. And you just kind of play along and make sure that I'm working on my own personal feelings about all of that stuff and reconciling it in my own story. So.
Well, as you guys can see, my first facial expressions tell it all. I'm reacting to everything that you're saying, and that's the difficult part because I don't have a poker face.
I don't either.
So, I am. They know when I picked up on it, and it's like, oh, and then they try to get themselves together,
right?
But it's challenging, to Devon's point. Yes, you definitely look like a Black man, but because I'm cultured, and I think it has something to do with that too. Perhaps, not interacting in a more diverse circle. Perhaps individuals just do not know. They are just ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, at all. It's just that they're ignorant. And so oftentimes, it's been said, you talk like a white girl, and it's like, what does a white girl talk like? Because I don't. So you just have to really just, I don't even know what to say about that.
Well, let me jump in on a couple of points because I want to bring some of these things out. So one of the things that first off we get to see is that everybody is experiencing this in similar ways and in different ways. So I think that is amazing. I think that was the really good part about having such a diverse panel of people because we are all seeing this in different ways. And what I think is particularly interesting is that Devon, you brought out this idea about the benefits of bias. Tell me how are you experiencing that? Like what cases? Give me an example of what that looks like for you.
So for example, I am still part of a professional club in Manhattan, and it's all working professionals that come together and get together for seminars, parties, and things like that. But it has gone lower because of COVID. I met a woman in a party who was always never spoke to me. Right, she always never spoke to me. And I was standing next to her talking, and then he said, "Hey, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from India." "Oh, I thought you were Black." I'm like, oh, she didn't talk to me for such a long time, or at least for a couple of months, thinking I was black.
Yeah.
Right? So then she was saying, oh, I know a lot of Indian friends, all doctors, they are engineers,
That's
the
right.
top of the
Yeah.
team. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to unfriend you. Thank God you're not my friend. I'll unfriend you. But I think the benefit of being an Indian at sometimes gets you doors open because you're
Yeah.
Indian. Oh,
Yeah.
Pichai, Sundar Pichai is from my town.
Mm-hmm.
Our vice president, our elect is from my state, right? So we all
Mm-hmm.
come from the same state. I can use it right now to say, you know what, Kamala
Yeah.
is my aunt, right, or my sister.
Yeah.
So, so I can see the benefit of being used. I can say Sundar Pichai, A.R. Rahman as a musician who did Slumdog Millionaire is from my town. So there are ways I can use it to my advantage
That's
to say,
good.
you know what, these are the benefits of doing it. But people, I mean, I work in technology. I'm building some, artificial intelligence on how to assess people using cameras. But I know in 8 seconds, because I'm dealing with the hiring phase, I'm creating video resumes. People make assumptions about people in
Mm-hmm.
just a few seconds.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the power of doing that assessment in a two-page document. The first thing they're going to see is the name, right? Boom, they'll make an assessment, throw it out, right? Then they go
Yeah.
and look at colleges. Harvard, oh, Harvard. I mean, did they pay money to get into Harvard? Who knows, right? They're part of the whole commission that paid money to get into Harvard. But oh, Harvard, this person is great, right? So you
Right.
make a lot of these assessments very quickly in the resume. I'm transforming it to say, how about this can be America's Got Talent, right? How about
Mm-hmm.
everyone present them in 1 minute, right? If they impress you, great. Let them take to the next interview. But why do you have to bother about their name, their
That's right.
qualification, education,
Yeah.
years of experience? So that's what I'm doing, right? In essence, to say, use your personality to your advantage. Kelly Clarkson, Justin Bieber, all these guys wouldn't be there. Cardi B wouldn't be there if there was no YouTube, if there's
Yeah.
no America's Got Talent. Why are we in a professional life still going into the 800-year-old two-page resumes yet? Right? So I'm trying
Yeah,
to say how to use the advantage of moving towards it.
Go.
that's
Go
such
ahead,
a
Michelle.
that's such a great point, Devon, that you made. And first of all, let me just say, I thought you were Nick Nelson at first when I saw the
Oh,
picture because your LinkedIn picture looked like to the point that I thought you were a black guy. Until I looked at your name,
yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, Nick's on the panel, and just that's a compliment. Nick is super
Oh, thank you.
attractive. All right, so if you don't know, okay.
You just made
but
That's when
but
that
to
bias
your
worked for you.
it's working for you. I'm like,
It's
yes,
working.
Nick's on the panel. Oh, this is gonna be great about bias at work. But to your point, like from a corporate setting, and I used to work corporately, right? Right. I worked for Johnson and Johnson and Adelphi Business Solutions, so these very large companies. And listen, they might not say it, but corporations use bias all day long to make
Sure
sales.
thing.
That's why, I was in pharmaceutical sales and medical device sales. This is going to sound very vain now that I should have said this sentence after what I'm about to say.
Hashtag humble brag.
but like for years, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies hired beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed women and men because that's who could get in the door and make sales, right?
Yeah.
And then they just started hiring beautiful women. I mean, like if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever been seen in your, not that I'm beautiful, but people might run a couple red lights to get to my house, is all I'm saying.
Michelle,
but
you
I
were
mean,
cracking me up.
but my point is that like listen, there's a reason corporations make billions of dollars a year. They figured out the formula. They know what they're doing, right? Which is why I say all the time, as entrepreneurs, we should learn from these scripts. And one of the things is using implicit bias to get what they need and to get the most that they need out of their employees so that they can consistently increase their bottom line. So like it's just a thing. That's what happens, right? They know what they're doing when they hire Indian people to do certain jobs. They know what they're doing when they hire women to do and perform certain duties. It's a thing. And I think that to Devon's point, especially since you're in HR, like we have to start being as smart as the people that are hiring us or putting us in positions to do these jobs, right? And to stop necessarily looking at bias or race or all of these things that could be negative impactors. and use them as positive impactors.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think we're in a space where bias now should be or could be our friend, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Definitely
so.
makes sense.
It does.
100%.
And I just want to jump on that one comment that he made too, along with what you're saying, Michelle, is that in the Indian culture, the reason why that woman was probably afraid of talking to you because you were a black man, right? So he thought, is because we were raised that with the darker the skin, the uglier we were. At least as a girl, I can clearly speak into that, and honestly and genuinely. And that's some of the bias that I grew up with in my own personal story. And so
Wow.
if my skin is darker, in fact, there's a product on the market, and I think there is still out there. It's called Fair and Lovely.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my parents, my mom put baby powder on my skin, and I thought it was because it was hot outside, and so it would cool me off. And I soon learned it was because it was making my skin look fairer, because I loved being out in the sun. And so that then becomes, you know, an example of bias that's deeply rooted in the culture. So even if you have someone that's a Indian employer, they got to work on their own biases about what they understand or they believe to be true. And so we fight through that, you know, every day. It doesn't really matter what part of the color spectrum we're on. So it's really important to understand the culture and get behind skin color. And a little plug for our work. That's why we get passionate about that, to help folks really get a handle on it.
And I think
let me jump in really quickly though, because I want to try to pull at one more thread here that Michelle brought out. Michelle is the only one who says that she rarely sees this. So I really want to kind of get into a little bit about that. Michelle, do you have any idea why you think that's the case? Are you oblivious to it? Are you just like, hey, I don't care about it, or is it the case that you face it so much that it's the case that it doesn't affect you the same? Like, how does that work for you?
You know, that's a very interesting question. And I would say it might be, you know, a little bit of all of it, except for the latter. I think one of the reasons that I'm not as affected by it is because I kind of stake my claim upon entrance. So, and this isn't something that I used to do, I was doing on purpose. I think it was just part of my presence, right?
Sure.
But usually people don't try me. And, you know, it could be, I mean, it could be white men, it could be black men, it could be black women, it could be like, I don't, you know, I just haven't had that challenge. Now, I don't know what happens behind closed doors, and frankly, I don't care. As long as that ends up in my bank account and you're not disrespecting me to my face, I don't find out that you're talking about me behind my back, that's fine, right? Ignorance is bliss. But I think, you know, I think it has to do with, I'm not sure, but I think it has to do with literally just knowing who I am when I walk in the door and being very confident in that whole demeanor. And then if anything does come out, like I'm not confrontational, but I'm not afraid of confrontation, right? So if someone says something that could be off color or could be off-putting, like I'm confident enough to check them. And I use the word check them like not like check, like, oh, like, no, you didn't. Like, not like that, but just like, hey, let me make sure I understood what you said. It sounded to me like you said this. And I say it with a smile and it's really cute. And I use my voice and it sounded like you said this. Explain to me what you meant. And they're like, oh, no, Michelle, that's not what, you know. And so now we're clear and we're all on the same page. And it's great.
Okay. Now look, I would be a hypocrite if I said that we were going to jump into all of this stuff about bias, and I didn't get into this one. Is this the angry black woman that you're showing? Because I know you're not sleeping on people.
No, like ABW is not even a thing for me. Like, I mean,
what's the difference between what you're doing and what that stereotype is?
Yeah, so I think the difference is the stereotype is, you know, shows like this whole, like this transformation almost that happens, right? And mind you, now this doesn't happen often. So it's really just it's a clarifying moment. It's a clarification of communication. So it's literally like, okay, Kelly, let me back up here, because it sounds like what you said to me was this, and this. That's what I heard. is this what you were trying to say? Or were you, and then you get the opportunity to say, no, Michelle, I wasn't implying that because you're Black, because you're a woman. I was just merely
Yeah,
saying that, blah, blah. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I just wanted to double check and make sure we're good. I did, when it comes to women or female male things, I haven't had a lot of, and I really haven't seen like overt racism, except for
sure.
one time when I was with a group of salespeople. We were riding through this area of town in Ocala, Florida. I'll never forget it. And it was me and it was 4 white people. And the guy said, talking to the driver, he said, don't turn right. If you turn right, you'll end up in Nigtown.
Oh,
Yeah. So so I'm telling you this, wait for it. Cause you asked about ABW. So I'm going to tell you how this doesn't play out. And so I said, because like I'm sitting in the corner, right? And this is literally the only time I think I've experienced racism like this. And he said, you'll be in Nigtown. And he said it like it was like, and so I went, because I was sitting right next to him. I was like, Craig, did you just say Nigtown? Like, that's what I said. So I wasn't, is that ABW? I was like, did you just say Nigtown? Like, I was confused. And he goes, yeah, that's what everybody calls it. It's Nigtown. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we shouldn't call it that. And and so we had a conversation about it. And I did actually report him because it was basically to prove a point, like to set a precedence. Like, this
sure.
can't happen. And so I didn't like go off on him. I didn't go ABW. I just was like, hey, that's not cool. You can't say that. And he was like, Michelle, Black people called it that. So I thought it was okay. And I was like, yeah, it's not okay. And so it's so not okay that I'm going to report it to management because this is not tolerable. It cannot happen. So I don't feel like it's ABW, but you guys tell me.
No, I there's a clear difference in that one.
I can tell you what ABW is. It's just when you are not professional in your delivery, period. And I don't know that it should be titled anymore ABW because it could be a WW. It could be, it can be whatever you want it to be. You can use
AIW.
AIW. Like, and it's so I think we should do away with ABW altogether, especially when when you're a professional, there is a way to deliver it, and I think that Michelle did a fantastic job. And
well,
so,
isn't it sort of ridiculous though if we're talking about somebody insulting you, and it is a very natural human thing to be upset when that happens. So it seems a little bit foolish to say, yeah, we're gonna. This is only a thing. This is the Black woman trope. Like it's foolish. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that and say, it is because somebody's upset, right? And being angry is not a bad thing. It's how we deliver it. So it's not just
Human
a professional. It's not necessarily just professional. It's an emotionally healthy kind of thing. So I had a situation where somebody who's African American was really angry at me, like very passionate in a situation similar to what you're talking about, Michelle. And in that situation, it was kind of like, you know what? I get that you're angry. You have every right to be angry. You just don't have the right to vomit it on me. I wasn't saying anything that was ticking you off, but you're already angry, right? So I respect the anger piece because that's real. You guys have gone through a struggle and, to stand by everybody. But I think it's important to just realize that getting emotionally healthy through this process is absolutely key, professional or not.
Absolutely. Colleen has something.
Yeah. Oh, Colleen? Yeah, go right on ahead.
Hi. Yeah. I'm like, what was I going to say? That was like so long. You guys talking and I'm like, that point, so many points, but they're all so good. I just wanted to say, just to the approach of like being inquisitory, like that Michelle took, right? Like, what did you mean by that? Is so powerful, right? Because when you take that approach to it, you like open up the opportunity to teach somebody something, not necessarily jump to maybe like the worst conclusion, but also like just, I guess like just maintain your like emotional state. I know I have a few friends that get very upset with any sort of perception of their technical capability because they're women and they work like in engineering fields and this type of thing. And their knee-jerk reaction is to always be very like accusatory, like, and to assume that it's like a negative bias on them when it could very well be just something that needs to be clarified. And it very much negatively impacts their career, impacts their day, you know, when if they can't take that inquisitory approach. And so I really love that, Michelle. And I wanted to say, you know, about the ABW thing, you know, if I'm hungry or tired, I am like there, like I'm like toddler tantrum, like
right. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's, I just wanted to add that. But I'm loving this. This is great.
That's great.
So now let me pivot here because Colleen is actually, you guys don't know this, but Colleen is actually the person who sparked this idea up in my head to actually talk about this, because we were having this whole discussion about you know, how women are behaving with other women in the workplace. And I want to pose this specifically to the ladies in on our panel. Have you experienced more bias from men or from women? Let's start there.
Can I go first?
Yeah,
I
jump
was
right on
thinking
in.
of that. So I would say from women more than men. And I'm actually working on a piece about competition right now on the side, but thinking about in the business field and as a woman of color, just that level of competition that can happen of,
Sure.
you know, and it's two-sided, right? One is I'm a woman of color who's talking about culture, who's trying to deliver my material and, you know, coach clients and do that kind of work. And so some people think, oh, well, you are totally the person for the job because you're dealing with the cultural stuff and you're a woman of color. So there's some clout there. While as the other ones are very jealous of some of that. And so then the competition ensues instead of collaboration, right? So I feel like I've been experiencing it more with women than I have with men. And that could be anywhere, right? We could change the dynamics of the individuals, but in general, and that's prior to being in the business world as well, feeling like, you know, women do get a little bit competitive with each other. I'm not sure why. We need to learn to work together and just kind of multiply our efforts. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, maybe we've got a lot more emotions wrapped up in our stories and maybe not having time to deal with some of those things or not. I don't know. But I'm a huge team player. And I think it's really important that we can all try to, if we're talking inclusion, we better be living inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Especially from a leadership standpoint, because you were kind of talking about that a few minutes ago. And if we walk into situations wanting our own position or our own approach or our own agenda, then we're not about inclusion at all. We're just about, let's celebrate diversity, pat ourselves on the back and go home and take a nap, you know, because we're not really there for each other. And that includes being present and, you know, fighting against those biases with women specifically is what I can say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my experience has been kind of a mixture. So when I was in the corporate world, I was in my most previous role, I was in the consulting industry, and so which is predominantly male, you know, populated. So therefore, basically 100%, I felt it in the male from the men, right? So now the flip side of that is now that I own my own company, I'm noticing not so much with the men, but more so with the women, and so that is interesting to me because these are women who I'm like a new kid on the block, you know, not even in competition with them. It's just weird. It is weird.
Yeah.
And
What
so, and
exactly are you seeing, April? Like, what are you? How are you getting that? What does that look like?
well, for instance,
Keep it
prior
real,
to
buddy.
I will,
Keep it
prior
real.
to becoming, do you want me to just give you both sides of it or just the female aspect of it?
Oh no, go ahead, both.
Okay, so with my previous employer, it was more so, you know, my title, if as an executive assistant, if ever I showed that I had like my business acumen, they would instantly become intimidated or felt the need to make sure that I didn't penetrate that threshold of growth at all.
Mm.
Like, we're going to keep you right where you are, as that executive assistant. And I come with, a plethora amount of experience, right, as a career EA. So now it's like I'm on the flip side of that, and I'm a CEO of my own organization, and working with women because I am a woman. I own a business. Minority women specifically is where I noticed the issue, and it's more of a competition. And what I mean by that is, prior to me launching my own business, I was supportive of all of the entrepreneur women that I had in my immediate circle. But now that I am, I've launched my business and I'm looking for that support, that same level of support, non-existent.
Wow.
Not gonna share anything on my page about your company. Not gonna do. No, you need assist. I mean, I'm reaching out to
Yeah.
you and I'm
Wow.
asking
Truth.
for help, and it's literally non-existent, to the point that I literally just say, you know what, forget it. Unfriend, drop them.
I'll
You guys
share
are
your
not
stuff,
friends.
April. Send it to me. I'll put it on my page for you.
I will
you.
too.
But it's the truth,
I'll put
to
a
the
big
point of
poster
where.
of you behind
Thank
you.
you. Oh my God, you're so sweet. And I mean, thank you. But when you figure out, but I think that these are the moments best when you figure out who's really for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
And,
Truth.
and I'm cool with shutting them down. Like, that's
Yeah.
fine. I have enough resources that, my Rolodex is thick. It is. And so I don't need them. So, it's unfriend, detach, block. And I just go, you know what? LinkedIn is my friend. I'll put a job posting out there and I'll hire and do whatever I need to do. But it's just sad,
It is
that you
very sad.
receive that amongst your peers, and you're what is it? So I don't know, can't explain it.
Michelle, how
It's
about
so
you?
interesting. Yeah, I was just gonna say it's so interesting because I hear a lot of that about women. And again, maybe I'm just oblivious to it, but I don't have any, the women that I know, the women that surround me, the women, I mean, they are super supportive.
Yeah.
They seek me out to help.
Mm.
I try to do the same thing as much as I can. I mean,
Sure.
I'm sure I missed somebody. I'll say like, I help everyone, and somebody will DM me in 5 minutes going, I emailed you, you never emailed me back.
Okay, sorry.
But for the most part, I see support in women. I see support in
Sure.
Black women. I see, unless somebody's just like hating low key and I just don't know it, which again, as long as I don't find out about it, we're good. But I think again, most of the bias, most of the time it's been with men, and it's the only instance, as you were talking, I thought about this one instance just a few years ago, before, because I owned my own company and then I sold it and I went to work for a large company, and I was their national training director. And I put together this huge spreadsheet with like formulas and all kinds of like value tables. I mean, it was just crazy. And so I gave it to, because I reported directly to the CEO, who's a guy. And so we had a meeting, and I gave him and I said, listen, here's a pro forma I put together on what we need to do in order to get this, this, and this, and how many, or whatever. And he opened it up and he goes, who helped you with this?
Oh my God.
Wow. Because it obviously wasn't you.
Oh, I'm telling you,
And so
that's
I
struggle.
forgot that happened until
And were you like, these did it all right
it was
here?
like, oh, my
Exactly,
fingers were
Colleen. Oh
typing
my
on the
God.
screen.
None of my
Seriously.
It was
friends.
hilarious. I literally just started laughing, and I was like, I won't say his name, but let's call him Bob. And I was like, Bob, why is that always the white guy's name, Bob? I was like, Bob, I said, are you serious right now? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I just call people out on it, right? And he goes, come on, Michelle, you didn't put this together. And I was like,
And he kept going.
like, who else would have done it?
Yeah, he didn't.
He doubled
He doubled
down.
down on it. Yeah.
He was like, you're
Who else would have done it?
wow.
And I said,
That's
and I
awesome.
said, do you think I didn't do it because I'm a woman, or do you think I didn't do it because I'm Black? Which one? And
should
he
have
goes,
said
oh,
that.
whoa, oh, Michelle, that's low, that's low. And I was like, well,
Psychic.
there can only be
Which
two
things?
reasons. Which is it? Because clearly I'm smart as a whip, so it's got to be these. That's all I got.
Exactly. That's all I got. Yeah, really.
And
I think
so
what
I think it's really, it's,
you should have said
yeah,
that your
but I
cousin.
don't, huh?
You should have, I was saying you should have said your cousin who was at the second grade did that, and only school kids are supposed to work here.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. So,
But I
you
think
know,
one thing I have for the women, I'm just having the quote. I was trying to find the quote. April, Michelle, and all the women CEOs who are having this envy. The quote says, "The wish will admire you, the wishful will envy you, the weak will hate you." Right? This is the reality for those who dare to be epic.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There you go.
Dr. Stephen Marboli. So that's what it is. That's the reality for anyone who's trying to step out. Do the best. Weak will hate you. Right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
People will envy you.
I mean, the hateration is out there.
So we got to shake it off, right,
We
ladies?
gotta shake it up. It's like,
but we have to keep
Well,
guys like Devon around us who will give us great.
Right.
Hold on, before we go in, because I want to get Colleen's take on this too,
Yeah.
so
Sorry,
we can all
Colleen.
shake this off together. No. It's the conversation role. That's why I'm here, to shut up and then to shut other people up. It's okay. Go ahead, Colleen. How did yours go?
So, despite being in tech, which obviously is a heavily male-dominated
Sure.
field, I've had a fantastically balanced career over 20 years. I don't think I've ever been the only woman in a room. My first development opportunity was an exact 50-50 split of men and women, all up and down like the experience level. So, and that was like at a startup, a really small startup company. So I've had this sort of unique tech experience where I'm almost like Michelle in that I'm kind of like oblivious to any issues that may have arisen. And usually, what I do is I kind of take the same approach as I'll take a humorous approach. So if somebody, and sometimes guys just don't know how to act or this type of thing, or well, I guess we're talking about like women in competitions specifically, but
Sure.
I'll take a humorous approach and I'll usually crack a joke about things like that. So I've had that experience, but I wanted to address the point about when you suddenly start becoming successful, or you're working with women and you might have that level of sort of antagonism. My take is that like I don't think that we're necessarily socialized like when we're growing up, or at least I wasn't, to like work on teams or like everything was a competition. All the sports that I was in when I was a kid, like it was in individual, like I was in dancing or swimming, and it was all very individual types of stuff, whereas I think boys typically get like team sports, right? So they learn how to be team members, and they learn how to be supportive in that way. And I think that might be a part of where that comes from a little bit.
Sure.
And the other thing I feel like is that if somebody's giving you guff because you're successful, it's obviously not, it's never because of you, right? It's always because they feel lack, right? It's what's missing for them, not what's your success, right? It's always like a mirror. We're always mirroring what we believe in ourselves is what we see in others, right?
So true.
So I think that part's for me is what I try to remember if I ever get any sort of flack, but I probably wouldn't notice it because I'm like usually just kind of in my own world, like paying no mind to whatever's going on.
Yeah.
And that's how you get stuff done. I mean, like you keep your head down and you just keep,
your
people are,
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Barely.
But I will say, like in my experience where I was in the heavily male-dominated environment, I really like. I am non-confrontational, but I will definitely. I don't shy away from confrontation, but I will. If I choose not to address it, I really have a I'm going to show you type of persona about myself. And what I mean by that is just every opportunity that came my way where I could showcase my talents, whether it's speaking in front of the entire 480 people in the office, and presenting, or putting together an entire Kelly. I know why you're laughing. Putting together, an entire event to showcase that I can rock it and stand in the front of the room and be the keynote speaker, then those are moments where I utilize my skill to shine. And me now being a business owner is like my ha ha ha
CEO.
ha 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 moment. I mean, it sounds very, preschoolish, but it's the truth. It's kind of like you did everything you could to not allow me to, catapult to the next level. And you knew that you had a rock star. Well, here I am, rocking my
Right.
star. So
April, you
Yeah.
bring up a good point. It makes me want to really kind of push this conversation more along the lines of how do you, when it does hit you, when you do find out, when you do see, hey, this person isn't on my side. They're not making observations to say, hey, I want to be helpful and constructive. These people don't like you. They have whatever issue, and it's theirs. But how are each one of you guys dealing with that when you have to be in that moment? Because we know that the ABW is off the table now. So what do you do?
I think, are you asking April first? Because you were
No,
directing
no,
the
go right on
question.
ahead, Kanita.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, in that moment, it's very clear that I don't like what's happening, right? I don't like how I feel. I don't like that this person who apparently I trust or thought I could trust is
Wait, are you saying, Kanita, that you're becoming personally conscious of this, or this is just like after the fact how you know you felt?
No, I'm being personally conscious, but you're also
Okay.
meeting me in this season of my life. But if we're talking about 10, 15 years ago, we're just going to not talk about her. So, having learned that, right? Practice it enough, do enough of the back checks, but then
Sure.
practice being in the moment. And so in those moments, it's like, I don't really like what she's saying or she's doing right now. And so in any of those kinds of experiences, I have learned to take a step back. What I like to say is take a step back and put grace in the space. Whether that's me trying to hear them differently, whether it's asking the question like Michelle and April had also said about the conflict resolution piece of saying, clarifying questions, those kinds of asking some of that stuff, maybe even thinking I need to learn something outside of here that I don't know right now. But it's just, I try to turn it into a learning opportunity. And then of course there's the unfriending and just peace out. I don't need to have that kind of negativity around me all the time. But even in that moment, I think learning to stay in the moment and staying present and really listening with everything that we've got in that moment. And then that helps us later look back at that and go, well, was I fully present? Was I engaging with that person? Did I really hear them correctly? And if it's someone that's been in your life for a long time, I guess maybe, take one more opportunity to have a conversation to find out, do they really have your back? My biggest annoyance is when people say, but I love you, right? And I'm like, so I don't, because you don't show up, you're not helping with this, or you're not action, right? So I don't want to put them in the haters camp, but they're walking there themselves.
All right. Let me get Devon in on this because I feel like we've shut my man down for long enough. Devon, come on, what do you got?
There's a quote.
Learning from all this experience. See, I've seen haters all my life, based on what religion you were, what you ate, what your caste was, because India has, America is interesting to me. There's only, some biases. In India, biases starts everywhere, right?
You're born with it.
Yeah, born with it, right? I mean, it's at a different level. So it's safer place for me in America compared to being in India,
right?
In terms of biases. But I think I personally have been conditioned to it. I don't challenge. Hey, you told me about this or call me. I don't care. Damn about what he said. For me, my objective is very important, right? If I want to make friends with that person because I want to get my objective, which will put me in a better state, I'll go and do it because I come from a place where opportunities are limited. It's a 1.3 billion people out there. It's more about being competitive. It's not about sentiments. But Indians are sensitive people, as Keith was alluding to earlier, very sensitive people. Yeah. But I think I've conditioned myself to say, you know what? Do I feel upset about something? I'm still emotional as well, but I always condition myself to say, am I going to waste today few minutes thinking about someone else? Because, and I think I've conditioned myself to put myself in their perspective, right? And going back to what Colleen was saying earlier as well, And also what generally has bias is, I think we look at a movie and we think every Caucasian man who looks like Clint Eastwood is Clint Eastwood, right? We look at anyone who's looking like Mel Gibson to be so, oh, this guy is like, the other superhero. And if you look traditionally until as the Black Panther came in, we always thought African American Black people had a different sort of perspective, right? Till a superhero came in. Even mine, how I looked in Indian movies, bald people were rowdies, right? They were the dons. So when you had bald, they always thought, oh, this guy's a bad guy, right? Till Rock came in, till you have all these superheroes are bald. Hey, you look like Rock. So I think the key thing is your personality. You can be sexual about it. You can beat yourself to death. Why is my situation like this? Or you try to find out, how do I work to my advantage, right? How can I be better than them, right?
Absolutely.
Right now, I'm building a technology that no one else is ever building or thinking of. I'm like, hey, you know what? I've used my experience to build something that someone in my experience in the future would never come across that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, for me, it's more about channeling my negatives into positives.
Yeah.
Very good. I like
Now,
that.
now hold on, guys, because I'm gonna make another pivot here, and we're gonna see how far we can go before anyone throws anything at me or anyone else. Let me ask you, Devon, that way of thinking, that way of looking at things, that way of saying that's not my stuff, that's your stuff, and I'm gonna make the most out of this. Why are you able to do that? Do you think that this is just you as an individual? Is this you as a man? Is this you culturally? What about you says that you're going to have a different outlook on this than pretty much some of the people on the panel have had? What's unique? Why do you do it?
I think I'm not good in communication. I think I'm a very quiet guy. I'm an introvert. I can talk when I'm passionate about something, but what I learned is I'm not going to change a person by talking to them. I'm going to change their muscle memory by using technology, right? If movies and media was used to change how we thought about certain class of people, how about I use the same to change that whole behavior, right? If I can give this blind hiring as a concept, which I'm trying to introduce, which I've patented it, I'm looking in 2021 to 22 to implement it. If we can have this panel discussion as we are having the 6 boxes, and Kelly, you are Obama, April, you are Kamala Harris, Michelle, you are another personality, and Kinita, you are Aishwarya Rai, right?
Wait, did you say Michelle? You're another personality. We don't know which one, but that's biased.
Right?
I've been biased for mine.
but think about the concept.
I can't get Michelle Obama. I can't get Michelle Obama.
Why not? Yes, Michelle Obama.
At least
Focus.
That's who you are, Michelle Taylor Obama.
officially be excited about being Kamala. Thank you.
I'm a little jealous. Just kidding.
But the concept is, how about all of us are the personalities that we chose for us to see and have a conversation, right? Let's eliminate that completely off so that we don't use the shortcut that we are physically programmed to be in to make assessment of people before they even start to speak, to use their words to assess them, right? And that technology is possible, right? My idea before I die and pass out is use that in justice system where a juror will look at a person as an avatar, as a person that they want to see them rather than an African American kid or a person they thought is willing to commit a crime, right? Because that's how our justice system is completely screwed right now, right? You have a person's profile, immediately you make certain assumptions. Oh, this person could have done it. How about we change that? And technology is going to be very advanced at that point. So my theory is I cannot be convincing people, having a chit chat with them, one-on with them, to say, hey, how are you going to do this? But I can certainly convert by using muscle memory and having them do something else. Change the rules, right? Change the rules of engagement by limiting their actions.
Well, I agree with that. I think that, like, for me, my goal as a business owner and my platform is to definitely close the gaps. I in every networking environment that I have been in, I have made it. I've been very cognizant about asking the hard questions whenever they, if you want to have a Q&A session towards the end of the networking experience, typically they do that and they ask questions about what's your challenge. One question in particular that comes up often is what has been your challenge as a business owner? or what has been your challenge with getting your foot in the door to make the sale? And because it's predominantly like, I would be a fool to not, right now in the climate that we're in, to bring up what the challenges are as a Black woman. Like, I need to, I'm very, professional with my delivery, but I like to challenge and bring the awareness, because now is the time to do it. We need to be having these conversations. We need to make sure that we utilize the opportunity to bridge the gaps, because we absolutely need, the allies, and we need to, have these relationships in place. D&I is, it was at first, it was like a trend, right? But no, now you need to really hold people accountable. And if you're going to have a D&I initiative within your organization, then, you know, you love me. Love is an action word. So let's go.
Yeah, well said, April. I think, and even like Kelly's question, I think that's so important for all of us to address, because we all have different narratives, just the 6 of us right here on the screen.
Right.
Let alone the folks that are listening, right? So the way that I handle those situations is really thinking about, how am I going to live my story? How do I get to live my story? And if various opportunities open that, connect me with different people, then maybe those parts of my story are really going to be impactful for those folks in different arenas, right? So it's really important that we each really do honestly, genuinely live our story in those moments, so that's my thought.
Very, very good. Yeah.
So let me see, that kind of moves us into this new territory, right? Because it's all fine and good when we're talking about how others are stepping on our toes and everything, and how there are these outside forces and things that we don't see. Let's turn this thing inward, though, and I'm gonna challenge everybody to be their most courageous selves. So when I was about 8 years old, me and my dad, we used to watch TV on Sunday mornings, and they had what was called Samurai Sunday. And man, I swear to you, I thought that all Asian people could jump over walls, and it was just my thing. Like, I literally thought everybody knew karate, because it was what I knew. And when I got to high school, and I actually finally met an Asian guy, I'm sure he was like, "You idiot," because when I'm talking to him, all of this comes up, and I'm not being insulting, and I'm not, but I'm ignorant to what happens just because of a lack of knowledge. That's one of my biases that I held on to for like 14, 15 years. Where are you guys seeing that maybe you have a bias, or not, maybe if not yourself, where does your group, your in group, so Black women, Indian men, people who have immigrated from other countries, calling Canadians, where do you guys see that maybe there is a any sort of bias? Can you find yours?
I know mine, but I
know
won't go
mine.
first.
I'll go first.
Go right on ahead, Kenita.
I'll go first. You know what? When I was growing up, I was given the message very clearly that girls don't matter, and because of your brown skin, you won't get anywhere in life. So with that in mind, I know that I did my own personal work to, kind of deal with that over the years and push away the messages that I was getting from people around me. But at the same time, when I am doing my work, I need to be very careful that I'm not fighting that voice in my head, but I'm actually doing my work, and I'm actually living in a space that's healthy and, like emotionally healthy, culturally healthy, and not wrapping those negative messages into the work that I'm doing. It's really important.
How would that show up in your work, though?
Well, I think there's if you guys can talk about the AWB. No, wait, did I say that?
ABW.
ABW. You know what I meant.
Yeah.
I could easily get angry if I continue to live into those messages and protect myself, right? So if I always walk into something saying I need to protect myself and I need to prove myself, then I'm going to miss out on the actual work. And the only person I'm protecting or feeling like I have to guard is that little girl in me that heard those messages. This adult gets to comfort that child by setting a different example and being the mentor and the person that she needed as a child.
Sure.
Right. So I get to do that.
Do you think Do you think that that's individual to you or excuse me, specific to you, or do you think that that is a cultural thing for women from East India or girls growing up in your age range?
Yeah,
That
honestly, I do think it might be more of my age range.
okay.
I'm in the early 50s, and so back 50 years ago, it was a really bad thing if somebody had a girl. And
Mm,
so even now, there's some challenges in a variety of parts of the country,
Hmm.
but I think they're doing a way better job. I think girls are really getting encouraged and empowered, and there are more movements around to help empower, equip. Mine is one of them, to help empower, equip, and encourage young women to step into their true selves,
mm,
and then just kind of comfort and heal the inner child, but yet be the individuals they were created to be.
mhm.
Sure. April, because I know you had a lot of thoughts here.
Well, yes. I think that okay. Repeat the question because I want to make sure that I
What's your
answer it.
bias,
Mm, my bias.
or you or your bias against your own groups, or
Mhm.
biases that you have seen in your own group?
Okay. So for me, to be honest and fully transparent, I have had negative experiences with working with other Black business professionals.
Mm.
And so what has happened is, and I try really hard not to allow every experience, I try not to carry that through, but
Hmm.
it becomes very challenging when it's the same issue over and over and over again.
Break it down for
And
us. What does that
what
mean?
I mean by that is, we have a Zoom call and you just don't show up. Or I've paid you for a service and the service is subpar.
Mm.
Now, I have been corporate all of my life. So I will be very honest and say that working and giving the Black community, and focusing and being diligent about supporting Black owned businesses it hasn't been my thing, just simply because I wasn't raised that way, number one. Number two, it's just kind of how my life went, right? So now I am given the climate, and I'll be honest, the climate that we're in, I do want to be more diligent in that because I think it's important to definitely put the resources back into the community. And so I have been very cognizant about that. It's a work in progress. It hasn't been a good experience. The professionalism coming from the corporate side, and now having to work within the urban communities with certain organizations, it's just not there. And I know that there's a disconnect, and I'm doing my best to be patient. But honestly, it's really difficult because I want to invest there in the community, but I also am a perfectionist. So
Mm.
I am accustomed to, when you've worked in the consulting industry, you're accustomed to receiving the best,
Top notch service, right?
top notch service. And oftentimes it's not the case. But you know what? As a business owner, one of the things I can say is that I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna
But
make it happen because I do want to be the type of business owner where I give back because I don't want to ever be perceived as though I don't love my own people because I do.
yeah,
And anything that I can do. So what I typically do whenever I have a negative experience, I do not, number one, I don't leave a bad review, and I absolutely have the conversation.
okay.
And I explain to them, this is what I expected, this is what I received. And as a business owner, it is not okay to not show up for a call or to not do whatever. So I try to make sure that I communicate that. So there's my truth.
I appreciate that, April. Now, you guys don't know this, but April and I have had this conversation multiple times,
Yeah.
and we've talked about when is it a case where you're being too hard on Black folks? When is
Yeah.
it a case where you're saying, "Hey, you need to level up, you need to up your game," and somewhere in there is obviously the balance. But I think that is a very, very good issue that you brought up, April. Colleen, how about you? What are you seeing along those lines? What are your biases?
Yeah. Oh boy. As you were talking, of course, I was trying to pay attention and then trying to think, okay, what am I going to say? Because I probably have
Sure,
so
sure.
many that I like, which one do I choose? And then that makes me look horrible. Oh
No,
my
no,
God.
it makes you normal.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I hope so. Hope so. I very much like sort of a similar bias uh, towards women in general myself. And this is going to get like a little bit deep, but kind of like towards my
Sure.
mother a little bit in a way. She's not on LinkedIn, thank God.
Just everyone
But,
else you're related to might be. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't ruin it, Kanita. Let her
yeah,
go.
yeah, pretty much. Hi, sis. It's fine. It's fine. But what I'll say is that just when
Sure.
when I see people with limiting beliefs, I get extremely frustrated, and and I saw that in my mother very much so. And I didn't come from like a South Asian family, as Kenita was describing there. But I definitely had like a very dominant father, and watching that dynamic growing up just really impacts me in my life. So whenever I see that dynamic in a meeting or even in my own life, I can
Can you
get almost
describe how you
very
see that
aggressive.
dynamic in the corporate setting?
Oh, well, I guess the classic would be like a male boss and like a
Okay.
female executive assistant. This type of scenario where I would always just be like, why doesn't that EA just want to be the
Sure, sure.
CEO? Like I have that mentality where I just want to I want people to really have just to really go for it. And like, what else can I tell you? Oh, like when you're in high school and everybody, what do you want to be when you graduate and all this stuff. And all my women, or I knew, women friends who would say, I'd love to be a flight attendant. And I'd be the one that's like, why not be a pilot? Like,
Sure.
go get it, girl.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest bias that I have is which now just sounds kind of wishy-washy, but it's like people's beliefs about themselves, about where their ceiling is. And although I recognize that sometimes, it's going past that cultural programming, going
Yeah.
past, all those, like the beliefs that we hold so deeply that we might not even know that we have. And we're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
no, I've got that limitation. I just can't, that's not for me, not for me in this lifetime. And to me, that's like the most heartbreaking thing.
Devon, how about you?
I think I have bias like any normal human is, but I think I've become very conscious because my mission is to fix it, at least in the hiring space. But one of the biggest bias I think I still struggle with, but I think I'm trying to overcome is bias towards the line of command, the authority, right?
Okay. Okay.
10, 20 years back, when someone is an authority, a president or a prime minister, if they say something, it is true. You believe it. You can't believe it right now, right? It's all fake news. Everything is fake. So coming from a background where you look at teachers as your gurus, everything your teacher says is right. Now you Google it, right? You can challenge your teacher right now. If you say everything your politician or a leader of a party will say is true, now it's all fake news, right?
Yeah.
So science, anyone can post something on LinkedIn like 100 times and it becomes true because someone has posted like 100 times. No one checked the record, right? So I think I'm getting this to realization from my son, who challenges me in everything. I'm like, oh, I thought this guy said it. No, I did some research. My son says no, it's wrong. I'm like, okay. So I think we coming from a different sort of education and a system where it was colonial, but I think it was more hierarchical to say the father is the top,
Yeah.
the husband is the top. You have the CEO who's always right, the teacher is always right. So you always did your job, ignoring what the other person was really doing the job or not, right? Because we assume the other person is always doing the right thing. So I think that sort of bias always existed. But
Hmm.
as people started to make all these mistakes, right? All the fake news, everything being incorrect, right? Knowledge is
Mm.
not right, right? Now the information hierarchy is completely screwed up in my mind, right? If someone says
Yeah.
something, now I have to wait to comment before I
Automatically
say,
against it.
you know what, that is not fact, right? This is not true.
Yeah.
So I think that is something as a bias I struggle because I don't know who is the right frame of reference to verify
Mm.
yourself. That's
Yeah.
always a challenge, right?
How, and let me ask you though, how did so that sounds awesome, right? Like you're fighting against a machine and everything is fake and there is all this fake news. Why is that bad? How is that a struggle for you? It sounds like your superpower is perfection. Like what?
Yeah,
Like, what?
but
Tell me how it hurt.
But the struggle is what I think Michelle was saying earlier as well. How corporates, everyone knows the bias. If I
Yeah.
hire a hiring system, my hiring system as an example, I want to put an app in a community where there's more African American. Indeed and LinkedIn doesn't exist in the community, right?
Hmm.
TikTok
Hmm.
does. So my concept is if I can put a TikTok for professionals in that community, they're going to record a video resume compared to they having a computer to go to LinkedIn to check out and connect with people. As simple as that, right?
Hmm.
So for me to accomplish this mission, I need to break the barriers where other Indeeds and Monster and LinkedIn is currently doing right now, right? I
Hmm.
need to go to an area. So the challenge is always going to be, for me to break into a barrier that no one has ever broken into, and going into an area that is never visited at this point. So there's always a challenge for me to be a first entrant in those areas, right? Being
Hmm.
trying to do something fair. If I want to do something fair, if I want to show a person's real age rather than creating fake resumes, an employer wouldn't come to me at first start because I have to tell them how many people I have right now. I should say I have only 10 people in my system.
Hmm.
All
Mm.
the other companies will say I have 10,000 resumes, right? Let's go and check how many resumes are really real, right? Let's see how
Yeah.
many resumes they have. So I think as a business, it's quite a challenge for me because I always have this
Okay.
battle in front to say, hey, should I put 10,000 fake resumes in my app to say, hey, I have 10,000 people, right? Because all the dating apps too, right? If you go to all the dating
Yeah.
apps,
Yeah.
all fake resumes, bots all over, right? All fake dating people. So you have fakes all over. So the challenge is, if you want to be fair and true and right, where do we head to, right? So that is a
Yeah.
bigger challenge I have to grow myself organically, to have something that has real people.
Yep.
Not as easy as you think. It's not easy at all in this real
Mm.
world. And then I think April, Michelle, you all know, right? Being as an entrepreneur, when you want to do something right, doing something right, or like eating organic food, eating healthy food is always not cheap, expensive, hard to get, and it's
Hmm.
one of the hardest commodities right now. So doing something healthy, something right in this environment is always tough. And I think when we have chosen that path, it's always going to get with hurdles. Your sale is going to be slow. You want to be the winner in the end. I mean, there's a saying, right? God's mills grind slow but sure. You'll be
Mhm.
successful, but the
Yep.
route is going to be slow. So
Yep.
that's the long run. You got to be just getting ready with.
Absolutely. Got to stay the course.
Stay the
Yes.
course.
Michelle, how about you?
Remind me what the question was
Yeah, I was gonna
again.
say. I know we
Yeah.
had to go over it once each time. Uh,
No, but the
we're
discussion's
talking.
great. I just want to make sure I'm answering your question, or we
No,
can
no,
talk
no.
about
So
something else.
no, no. So we want to go into your bias, the bias that you've either seen in yourself, the bias you've seen in your group that you identify with.
Um, it's interesting. I used to have biases, and let me go back. When I said or anything else, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I was just saying like if you had something else too, because
Mm, mm.
if you were trying to move the conversation, I wasn't trying to pigeonhole you into your into
Michelle,
your
we are
original question.
family. You go right on ahead.
um, and so I used to have bias, I think, and then like they usually get dispelled because what I've found is that like pardon my French, but like everybody does like effed up shit. I'm sorry, like just like everybody does. And I used to think my black clients didn't pay like my white clients, but then I got these huge Fortune 500 companies 9 months to get paid from them, right? I used to think that it was CP time. We were always late. But then I'd have like, one of my great Indian friends, like you're late all the time. You're on CP time, but you're not CP. What is that? Like, I mean, so it's just like, you know,
Yeah.
so I just like I found myself just stepping outside of all of this stuff and really understanding that like everybody has their thing. And it seems like the more I try to box myself in or somebody else in to something, the more it just doesn't end up going that way. So I try to like just like really enter into each, just like April said, which I thought was great. Try not to like, trying to unpack the suitcase after every experience. It's kind of like, when you go into a new marriage, you don't take the old luggage, the old baggage from that into the new marriage, right? So
Right.
that, people individually have an opportunity to um to do what's right or what's not, right? And try not to judge people on that individual experience because I like it, right? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I make a good 10 to 20 mistakes a day. So I mean, I don't
I'm
want to
glad we can
be
number
held
yours. I'm up there.
Absolutely.
like at least. I mean, I'm being conservative. But my point is that like so if somebody held that against me and counted it as a bias against blacks, then that'd be a
Yeah, we're
problem
in
because it's
trouble.
not fair, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I really am trying to be mindful of that. But having said that, what I have recognized, and this is this understanding and comprehension piece, especially as it relates to Black businesses, so many of our challenges are financial. And a lot of
Sure.
times, what you will hear is, people having challenges financially dealing with Black businesses.
Hmm.
And so what I've really found as I unpack that is that just institutionally, we don't always have the money to do the
Hmm.
things we need to do, and we don't always
Sure.
have access to the money to do the
Right.
Sure.
things we
Yep.
need to do, right? And some
Hmm.
of it's our fault for sure, and some of it's not. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, I think we have to really understand why so many of us are in the position that we're in, and we can get out of it. Absolutely, there's several. Kenneth says I'm never late. You're right, Kenneth. Uh, no, I'm reading the comments as they pop up. But like understanding why, as a people, we are where we are, and that's not just black. But I mean, to your point, Kanita earlier, with talking about Indians and you know um, shaming girls for being darker skinned, right? Or
Yeah.
I mean, like all of these things historically that shape us generationally. Like there are reasons why Indian women are where they are because of generational transgression that's happened.
Yeah.
And so to your point, Devon, it's like paradigm shifting our way out of that stuff
Exactly.
Hmm.
so that we can be, so that we can consistently be better.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
that's hard. But understanding that makes it easier to deal with, with certain
Yeah.
races, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of generational change. Like, making stimulus checks won't cut it. Like financial literacy in public
Right.
schools will, right? Like, those are the conversations I feel like we need to be having. So the sciences will likely start to go away, but that will take hundreds of years.
Yeah.
When you said earlier, what
Did
you were
y'all get
talking
that?
about,
Got it.
yeah,
I think my
Michelle,
screen froze.
Yeah, just a little bit. You're good though. We got most of the audio.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kanita.
I was just going to say to Michelle's point about, really identifying systemic racism, like that stuff is real, and there are systems that are totally out of whack. So that stuff is real, and I think that's what I'm saying to folks: like, take a step back, put grace in the space, and maybe go into a situation remembering that systemic racism exists. Let's just put that out there on blast right now. It exists. And so perhaps this person has some of that narrative. It doesn't mean we make all these decisions based on that one fact, but at least we can walk into a situation and say, okay, if it exists, how might I respond to this person differently? That's the whole putting grace in the space and saying, this is how we can step into that space and be like, I understand something that's really difficult for you, and I want to stand with you till we figure out how this, whatever it is you're working on, works out.
Well, let me ask about that then, because um, that sounds awesome, Kanita, and obviously it's going to be much, much harder to
Of course it
to
is.
act out,
Yeah.
so when you go into a situation and being a black man in America, I get it. I get it all
Yeah.
the time. If I'm not smiling, or if I'm, there's so many different things where there are barriers to that. How do you become for so I think Michelle is unique in the sense that Michelle is already challenging herself to say, wait a minute, I've been wrong a lot of these times, or enough of
Mhm.
these times that I'm
Hmm.
conscious of let me not jump in. But it's a very natural tendency. So let me ask you guys, what are you doing to become aware of places, or to negate some of your biases?
For me, putting myself in the situation over and over again, because it's an underdeveloped muscle. Period.
Okay.
I've
What does that
worked
look
in
like?
I've
Mm.
worked in the corporate world, so it's an underdeveloped muscle. So what that means is be more intentional with giving the mom and pop shop the opportunity. Um,
Okay.
because I mean, I have to develop that. If I am
Yeah.
a business owner, just as an individual, right? Forget that I own a business, but just as a person, if I say that I love everyone and I want everyone to be successful, and I pride myself in saying what I love is I have a compassion for people and I want to leverage everybody to be their best self.
Hmm.
I can't do that if I am only s- um, you know, working with vendors who are already established or who
Yeah.
have a 5-star rating. You don't become good at what you do until you're given an opportunity. And
Sure.
so if my gripe, for lack of a better word, was that I was not allowed to, penetrate a certain threshold, then it would be really hypocritical of me if I then now became this business owner and I don't give them an opportunity,
Right.
period.
Right.
So,
Mm.
Well said. And this is the time where I expect to have Daryl Perry hop in and tell us about how the good black businesses are out there, and he jumps in with this all the
mhm,
time.
I remember him. He does, yeah, he
Yeah.
does do that.
So
Daryl,
let
where
me.
you at,
Yeah, and,
Daryl? Where are you?
and he's right, because I mean I think too it's circular, right? I mean, I think Devon, you said this earlier. I think it was you.
Mhm.
Pardon me if I'm incorrect. Um, that it's the people that we're around, right? With whom we surround ourselves. A lot of times, it's
Mhm.
like that's what we get. In April, I am with you 100%, because I worked in a corporate environment where, I mean, everything was laid out, the processes were very, buttoned up. And then when I
Defined. Yeah,
switched to this entrepreneur world and it's a totally different thing. And
it is.
especially in Black businesses, right? Because again, lack of
Mhm.
access, or just not knowing,
And
or
experience. Yep.
just,
Yep.
like, hey, the man is like taking advantage of us. Screw the man. I'm starting my own business. I have no idea how, when, what, where, or
Yeah.
who, but I'm doing
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
right? We just don't have access to everything we need to be
Hmm.
significant, or
Hmm.
we don't get the access that we need. Sometimes we have the access, we just don't always go get it. I will say that.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but to that point, it's like, so when you make that switch from corporate to then dealing with entrepreneurs, and especially in the consulting and the coaching space, and I'm
Hmm.
dealing with people, and then I'm like, well, what's your budget for? And they're like, I don't have a budget. Do you? Oh, well,
Hook me
is
up.
this not your business plan? Well, I didn't do a business plan. I don't need
I don't.
funding.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does happen.
Okay. Well, what's your vision? Let's just talk about what
It's
who's your
small
target market?
businesses that's the case
It's just
anyway,
like,
regardless. Yep.
and so then to your point, April, then you're sitting there like, okay, these people don't know business. I'm not doing business with you. You don't know business. Like, how is this going to happen? Like,
Whew.
but you're right. You have to say, okay, everybody didn't work at Johnson Johnson, right?
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
really is bliss, and people just don't know. People call me sometimes complaining about, and I'm like, did it ever occur to you that you don't know? I was having a discussion with one of the mayors the other day, and he was like, he didn't, they opened this business and they didn't even come and talk to me, and I'm the mayor, and they should have. I'm like, they don't know they should call you. Like, is there like a list of like things you should do before you open a business? Make sure you call the mayor and talk. Like, how would he know that it's like he's dumping all of his savings into this bricks and mortar business? He's not thinking about you, right? And so I think that, like, to your point, April, I love that you said that. Like, we have to step back, like everybody. We need to step back and say, like, okay,
Don't forget
people
where you
just
came
don't
from.
know.
Just don't
I
forget where
didn't
you came
know.
from. Period.
Don't forget where you came from. Yeah, because we were all once here. Some of us, the
Yeah.
line, the starting line is different, but we all started somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do think that that's why it's important for all of us as entrepreneurs to kind of make the point. This is bias I have. This is bias I'm seeing. This is how I handle bias, and knowing that all of us are coming from the same place. Every one of us has a very very similar goal, and when we say we're starting businesses, to some degree, it's about grabbing this measure of success. So I think it's a beautiful thing that we're getting
Mhm.
into this. I want to make sure we get at least a couple of more of you guys in on this. So, Colleen, let me hear. What are you doing to become conscious or stay conscious of that?
Um, Sorry, I had so many things going on in my head about
Yeah,
last.
sorry.
So about working through my biases, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess.
You seem to be at least aware of
Yeah,
some of them to some degree. So, what got you there? Like, how do
yeah.
you why aren't you just b-balling and going into, oh, yeah, I know I'm right, and this is what's normal because it's what I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's I, part of my thing is I really enjoy people, which is
Mm,
weird being on the IT computer side. You think I would understand databases a little bit better than humans, but I actually do enjoy like really understanding what makes people do what they do
mm,
and why are they holding themselves back from something, or what
sure.
is maybe their bias towards themselves, or their perspective on the situation type of thing. So I just try to approach things with empathy, I guess, and put myself in the other person's shoes maybe before I try to steamroll into what I think they should be doing with their lives,
Sure.
which is being a pilot or a CEO.
Right.
It's open to you if it's an option. If you ever had that
Like,
thought that maybe I should
either of
like,
those things.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Can I just
So
ask?
yeah.
Can I just add one thing about biases, though? Like,
Yeah.
it's not some. I don't know that biases will ever go away out of our stories,
Sure.
Oh.
but it's really important that we don't address a situation through that bias lens,
Mhm.
Hmm.
right? And I think there's a
Doesn't
lot of
define.
people that think that
Yeah.
get rid of the bias, get rid of the bias.
It
It's
doesn't
bad.
go away.
We can't. We were raised in homes, we were raised in communities, we were raised in cultures that we end up just having those as part of our story. And
Yeah.
so instead of looking through them and treating each other through those biases or even ourselves, I think it's really important, especially for our listeners, to be thinking about, put them aside, like realize that some of them are wrong and some of them are not going to be very
Right.
encouraging or supportive of the other person,
Hmm. Hmm.
and put on an attitude of learning and have a real sense of wanting to learn before wanting to
Mhm.
teach,
Exactly.
right? Like
I,
that mindset.
I I do think that that is a beautiful way of stating it, Kanita, because one of the things that I know that whenever you go through these coaching trainings or just dealing with clients face to face, what you're getting is this opportunity to see things through their lens. And I got to tell you that for me, there's nothing more fascinating than that. So it'll be the case that I'll be talking to someone and they obviously have bias, and sometimes this is outright racism, or I'm a Christian and I've had people be completely angry at me because I'm a Christian, and it's the case that being able to it really is about empathy and emotional intelligence and becoming self-aware enough to be able to say, I'm going to make a space for you, to do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do. And once you come out of that space and come into my space, we can still have a little bit where we're not butting heads. And I've actually had people who were very, very anti-religious people say, "Hey, I respect where you come from." Probably still not going to cross on over to being Christians with me, but at the same time, these people are saying, "Hey, I can respect where you're coming from," and we have a mutual sort of understanding. So I think there's really you really hit on something there, Karishma, Kanita, with that.
It's okay.
Karishma was last week.
Oh,
Mhm.
well, and can I just share a short story around
Yeah,
that exact experience? This
yeah,
was about 25 years ago when I was on the front end of this learning curve. I had just moved to the US, probably a couple years prior to that from Canada. So, hey, Colleen, fellow Canadian.
right,
But I was part of a group that was doing anti-racism training. And I attended the workshop. It was a 2.5 day deal and went through all the stuff. We had a work, like a lunch date afterwards to debrief the whole thing. And there was a woman who was sharing her story and her challenges that she was experiencing. And she kept using African American and Black interchangeably.
hmm
And sorry, people of color. She was saying
hmm
African American and people of color interchangeably. And
Mhm.
I struggled because I couldn't relate to her story.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to, but I couldn't because I'm not African American and I didn't experience it in the way she did. And I
hmm
felt like if she kept saying people of color, and I'm thinking, but that's not
like
my
I meant,
experience either.
yeah,
Right.
Mhm.
So I was like in this space. So I asked her graciously and I said, I really value your story and I think it's absolutely crucial. Can you maybe not use people of color and African American interchangeably only because I really want to honor your experience? I want to learn from you. She
mm,
turns around, puts her finger in my face, and starts screaming at me and saying, "You have no idea what it's like to be a Black woman in this country." I just said that. I was trying to
hmm
say that.
hmm
And I was like, oh my word. Okay. So that kind of helped around everything else that was going on in my story to kind of walk this line and start to help people understand culture,
sure,
get behind skin color, and appreciate that not everybody's narrative is the same. And if we can walk into something learning rather than just teaching, we might actually hear each other, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that stayed with me, and it was something that I would never forget. But it was something like, all right, how do I navigate these waters? These are deeper than, like, I dove into the deep end pretty much and have been,
Mhm.
swimming and some days flailing, but
Yeah.
I'm way better place now. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, the whole people of color thing. Because, people of Indians don't have the same
Right.
struggles as a Black person. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I will be honest, like sometimes I struggle with being grouped into the people of color. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's not enough to really, I don't get angry about it or anything. I just am like, you know what? It depends on the setting that I'm in. And people, I think that depending on your circle, your experience, your who just how versed you are in the term. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people don't understand the term, you
mm,
know? And so, and that's fair. So I try not to really live really close to that, but it's interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Kelly, before you go on, I also want to tell Kanita, just so you know, within the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
we also have, this light and dark
Oh
shade
yeah.
color going on.
Yeah.
It's
I
called
can.
the paper bag test.
Oh, okay.
Google that.
I will.
yeah,
And
that'll
because
be a fun read.
it's a thing. Um,
Yeah,
and
it is a
so
thing.
it's
Sure.
a thing. Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
I think the if you're I think it was Michelle helped me and Kelly helped me. Is it if you're too dark, then you're just ugly. Okay. Black, the blacker you are, they just don't think that you are smart, that um you were the poorest. So the lighter the closer to white you are, the more successful they automatically think, and then they treat you differently.
Yeah, it's a lot of that.
It's
The
still
the
happening.
I think it's a whole new episode happening right now.
yeah, Yeah, you know what, April, that does make a good point. Let's table that one until we
We
do
can table it. Yeah, I just wanted
the
her to know that it's
Yeah,
not just
no.
in your culture; it happens here too.
Well, and
So,
that's
yeah.
it, right?
does.
There a lot of
Yeah.
these nuanced issues are in all different cultures,
hmm
and we're not paying
Well,
attention to that because sometimes we tend to be a little bit more
yeah,
narrow focused. So
hmm
let me ask then, is it so we see in India, I've never been to India,
mm
but there's a caste system that acts a lot like social divides,
yeah,
same as in the US.
yeah,
So, considering that this is something that happens everywhere, these biases, these separations, these things where we are mentally basically saying, I need to make a difference. It sounds a lot like just tribalism. It sounds a lot like this idea that I need to have somebody be
hmm
different so that I can fit with my group and your group can be the bad guys. So if that's the case, what do you, I agree with you, Kanita. We won't be able to stomp out bias,
right.
but what can we do? Because all of us are leaders in our own right. We're all either selling to people and interacting with people, or having employees, or marketing our books. We all have people that we're gonna touch, that we're gonna influence. How do we, as leaders, say, "I can do something about this"?
I think it's self awareness. I just put that 2 cents in there to say I think it's self awareness that each individual person, if you're going to be in a leadership role, especially, it has to be very clear on who they are, what they're bringing to the table, the good, bad, and the ugly. We all
Hmm.
have those parts,
hmm
and
Yeah.
learn to navigate those. Right, learn to like deal them out like cards, if you will, and put some of the deck away when you're in those spaces. It's really important, and I think a lot of people are not self-aware, and so they're
Yeah.
going to be triggered, and they're going to respond in ways that, unfortunately, other people will blanket statement you and say, "Oh, then all Black people are like that," or "Oh, all Indians are
hmm
Hmm.
like that," and it's like, no, we're not. All Canadians are like that, and we're not. And so it's important to just kind of really, really be self-aware. So that's my thought.
Before we get off of you though, Kanita, I wanna really get into this a little bit more. How how do you do that? Because it sounds great, but where's it come from? How do you start that process? For the layperson who's looking at this right now, or listening to this, or reading it later, how do you do that? How do you start that process?
The process of being more self-aware.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think there's a lot of different methods that people have, but as a coach, when I coach clients, I work very strictly with their own cultural bent and how that implements and engages with their emotional health and then how they're responding in their situations. And so kind of helping them unpack that suitcase so they can repack that suitcase that Michelle brought up earlier in such a healthy way that they can kind of take that new model into their relationships and not
hmm
walk around trigger happy, pun
hmm
intended.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah,
Devon, let me ask you.
that's funny. That was
How do
good.
you
I'm a pun girl, sorry.
Devon, I got a pretty good idea of how you're doing it, because part of what you're doing is an app to really try to alleviate some of this social bias. So I'm not going to give you enough time to pitch it to us, but tell us about what you're doing to steer away from this bias.
So I think my concept is purely trying to do something rather than trying to be someone, right?
Okay.
I think that's. I mean, I read this quote. Margaret Thatcher said. I mean, the first women prime minister in a British environment, right? You know
Hmm.
how tough that can be for a woman in that environment, right? This is
hmm
20 years back,
Yeah.
and my vision has always been to put a device in a person's phone or in their palm to use as a weapon against bias and discrimination.
hmm
Um, we always talked about an alarm when someone comes to steal a chain from you, back from you, press an alarm. But how can we give the same sort of protection against bias and discrimination? So that was my vision of saying, hey, now you can sit at home and order Uber Eats, Netflix, so many things you can order sitting at home to have $1 billion Netflix, multi-billion-dollar Amazon. All these are billion-dollar companies that are getting money, right? For having you sit at home in the comfort of your seat and ordering all these things. But when it comes to getting jobs, getting opportunities, why do we have to struggle so hard? Why do you
hmm
have to wait for a couple of weeks, several weeks for your resume to be read? Why do you have to eagerly wait for a recruiter to call you, right? Why do you have to be jobless for months, right? Because corporate America or the environment as such does everything possible to make your life easy. For example, getting into Amazon, it'll take you a month to get hired, but you can buy their product in one click. I'm like, what happened now, right? You can make us buy a product in one click in few seconds, but to hire a person, you take couple of months, right? So I think for me, it is how do I simplify the whole process by having a Uber-like app in your phone that you can get a job, that you can find a candidate overnight, talk to the candidate overnight right now, right? Because people around you right now, it's 9:40 in East Coast. There are people around me who are jobless, trying to figure out what they're going to do in December. 1st November, they had to pay rent, right?
Yeah.
How do we get that right now at this point of time? How can they have an app right now? They can look around with with an augmented reality, and they can take an app, look around, and they can see jobs that they can apply right now, right? Augmented reality. Rather than finding where is Wendy's to order fast food, I can find a job 2 miles away. I can click a button and apply. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? In addition to removing bias as a concept to say, hey, if at all you're doing it, employees, I'm going to give it as an incentive. If you're going to hire someone from me through a blind hiring process where you're not knowing who the other person is, the whole system is free. Because you take the risk, I'll take the risk with you, right? But the trick is not know the person unless and until you give the offer letter to the person. So otherwise, you'll not know the identity of the person. You have to release the offer letter, then you'll know who the person is. But why do you care, right? Job needs to be done. You shouldn't care, unless if you're a software developer, why do you need to care if it's a man or woman, black, white, yellow, any color? No, you don't care, right? Get the offer letter, let the other person look at the offer, you accept the offer, then you'll reveal the identity of the person. So that's what I'm defining a process in 2021 to see what it is. But I think we need to make a fundamentals of getting jobs and opportunity easier, right? Not getting Wendy's and McDonald's and Uber Eats in few seconds. I think we need to change that equation totally.
Well, hold that thought, Devon, because those guys may be my sponsors at some point. So we love you, McDonald's. Now,
And Wendy's, I love that chicken sandwich.
let me ask you, Colleen, what can you personally be doing as a leader? I know that you're open to work with all of these different companies in a CTO form. How can you be working personally toward alleviating bias?
Yeah. So one thing that I genuinely try to do is make sure that we cast a very wide net if we are looking for people. And I'm in I don't know how many Slack groups and on however many websites and stuff, and I will go to my women's groups, women tech groups on Slack, and just be that'll be the first place I go to when I post roles. So that's one of the first things, is just making sure that you're not always going to the same place when you are hiring. You're not always using the same recruiter.
That's smart.
And then the other thing is actually kind of checking yourself when the resumes do come in, because sometimes you will see not non-standard names, I'll say, on them. And so you need to actually go, okay, what's this person's story? And instead of just looking at the name and being okay, I can guess who this will be. You dig into it and really read into it. But then that also, diving deeper into that, is you look at those resumes and you don't necessarily cut people out because they don't have a degree, or because they have a gap in their resume story or something like this. Usually those are the most interesting people that you'll bring in, and some of my best hires have been people that either don't have degrees or have gaps in their resume, and you hear about what they were doing over that time. So
very good.
It's really just but also to your point, the whole point of this discussion is to acknowledge okay, when I see a name that doesn't look familiar, I might get a little a little feeling, and then it's okay, well, just let's let that ride, and don't come down on myself for it, because
don't stop. Don't stop there.
And I mean, we're human. We're part of our biology, our whole lizard brain is to look for differences, because differences when we were cave people were dangerous, right? Yep. So you gotta just acknowledge that part of yourself and just be okay, and then jump over that hurdle and then continue on.
Absolutely. Very
Let me
good.
ask you, Michelle. What are you doing? What can you do to in your world, in your circle, to get rid of or at least lessen bias?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like I mentioned before, right? Being intentional. And I love what April said earlier, putting yourself in that situation. I think we should be more driven by our experiences with people as opposed
Mm,
to what we see on paper, right? Experience is a thing, and I think we need to give ourselves an opportunity to experience people.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
intentionality in the experience, not our preconceived notion of
yeah.
what we think they're going to be or who they're going to be. So what does that look like specifically?
Mm,
Somebody calls me and they start talking to me and they sound like biased. They're probably not the most educated.
sure.
Um, they present as though they aren't as economically advanced,
Mm,
maybe as someone that
Yeah.
I normally
sure.
engage with, biased,
Hmm.
but I don't shut down because of those two
Yeah.
things.
Right.
And I'll give
Right.
you an extreme example. I had this happen once. This
Mhm.
girl, this woman, I guess I say girl because she's younger, but she reached out to me on Instagram. She saw some stuff that we posted about coaching, and so she DM'd and said, I'd like to hire you to help me with my business. And when I looked at her profile, and I was thinking, God, she's mighty young, biased, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my head, okay, is she gonna be able to afford me? Like, does she know how much this costs? I mean, like, I'm being
Yep.
transparent,
Yep.
There
right?
you go. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. Yeah.
Um, but bias, but I was intentional. I was like, listen, I'm gonna ride this thing out and see where it takes me because if working at Ferguson Enterprises didn't teach me anything, it taught me that the person that walks in that showroom to buy $1 million house is not always wearing $1 million clothes. Okay.
That's right.
So I go through this thing with her and I tell her how much it is. And she says, okay, she says, a little bit out of my budget, but this is really important to me. I know you can help me. I think that girl paid me faster and more on time than anybody I've
Wow.
dealt with.
Wow. Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
She hadn't finished college. She
Hmm.
was a single mom. She was raising her 2-year-old son.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm telling you, like, I mean, I had her on retainer for, I think, 3 months. I never had to ask her for my money, ever. She was
Yeah.
always on time and she always showed up. When she didn't, she was in the hospital, texted me from the
Hmm.
hospital. I'm not going to make our call today. So
Hmm.
that's the experience. I gave myself an opportunity to experience her instead of her
Hmm.
It's
story,
important.
instead of
It's
what I
important.
thought she was. And that's how I think you could do it, Kelly.
Hmm.
Man, that is beautiful. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys recognize how many pillars of like foundational pieces y'all just put in, but that is all really, really good stuff. Being able to alleviate or get past our own fear of being biased, our own fear
Yeah.
of falling into one of these bad situations is so huge. It's such a great thing. Um, before we hop off, because we're running short on time now, I want to do this. I want to try to make sure we get a chance to tell everybody where we can reach every one of you and what you guys may be able to help with, because honestly, I feel like that's just going to be a great thing. Each one of you is a great resource. Um, someone's tap dancing or falling in the back.
What
On the
happened
back.
back there? Did somebody
Yeah.
just die? Did somebody
Mhm.
catch COVID? What's going on back there, Kelly?
Oh
No
man,
COVID.
you guys are
Is
seeing
COVID
probably
living
the
in your
more
house?
straight lace. You guys are seeing the more straight lace Michelle than the one from last week who called me a convict. I just want to put that out there. I just want to put that out there. Uh, so, April, you are
Ah.
running. You're running your virtual. No, you know what? I'm not. I'm gonna again. I'm gonna let you tell us where to find you.
Totally fine.
because none of you guys
Okay.
sent bios, so I'm just
Oh,
so
okay.
Kanita.
Well, next time I will do
Yes.
that. So the name of my business is ADP, and it sounds like like Apple David P for Patterson, but it's not. That those are my initials, and so obviously the huge payroll company is ADP.
Oh yeah.
So simply because they stole my name, I decided that my when I was trying to figure out like what I would call my business, um, my youngest daughter said, "Why not just call it ADP?" And I said, "I just told you why I can't do that." And she said, "No, mom, the number 80 with the P at the end." And I go,
Um,
"Ah." Brilliant. She's a Columbia college student. So I'm like, that money, yes, yes, marketing. But anyway, it's 80, which is the number 80 with the P, virtual assistant. And what I do is I offer a 360 platform, anywhere from executive assistant services to project management to brand development for my clients.
All
cool.
right, all right, and everyone who's listening to this, who's seeing this, the links for everyone will be in the comments on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube when this is done. All right, Kanita.
Yeah, so my company's name is SEMA Global Consulting, and SEMA is actually my middle name, and it means boundaries. So I'm a big boundaries girl, and that's what I help my clients kind of work through and understand and apply in their own story so that they can live into their best self. We're very passionate about inclusion, promoting inclusion, not just the diversity piece, but promoting inclusion to help folks really be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so helping people become more self-aware through workshops or individual coaching. I've got some workshops and then the individual coaching and then also leadership development. So those are some ways in which I do it, and also speaking engagements and that sort of thing. So I look forward to hearing from anybody that's listening, and you can reach me at our website, semaglobalconsulting.com.
All right, thank you so much, Michelle. You got a billion things going on. You guys don't know I had to track Michelle down for a week to get her in for this too. She's just that busy. Michelle, tell us about what you're
You
doing.
got me. Come on. So you guys can find me Gagnon Media. That's Gagnant. It looks like Gag Nant, but it's Gagnon. It means winning in French. So gagnonmedia.com. And if you're in business and you need a way to get your message out there through TV, print, radio, billboards, we've got you, whether you're in Atlanta or anywhere else. And I also travel. Well, I used to travel around the nation speaking. I'm not international yet, Kanita, but I'm going to get there as soon as we can
It's all
go
good.
places.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and so, I'm happy to always speak to groups on sales, leadership, visioning, business planning, entrepreneurship, parenting, all those things. You can find me on just about everything at Michelle Taylor Willis. My website is Michelle Taylor Willis. And if you are a parent and you are homeschooling and you're working from home, then you absolutely need my book, Raising Significance. It's an MTW guide to raising independent, well-rounded, and confident kids. And it is on pre-order right now at
Mhm.
MichelleTaylorWillis.com.
That's right.
Congratulations.
And
Thanks,
that's a
Kelly.
little bit, you can't quite see it, but that is the book right behind her. That's the post up for it. So if you could kind of show that a little bit, Michelle.
Oh,
There
I'll
you
just
go.
take this off and just
There
bam
you
it in
go.
your face.
Look, this is what we're here for. Raising
Mhm.
significance. So you guys should not have a problem at all finding her book. Uh,
Right.
thank you,
Thank you,
Michelle.
Kelly.
Let me just ask you, Colleen.
Yeah. I first of all love that book. I'm gonna be checking that out in a bit here. But
Mhm.
Thank
thanks
you.
for sharing that.
Yay.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
We got
So
one
you
sold.
can
Yes,
find
thank you.
what's that?
So crazy.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Colleen Watorik. I also have a website, Colleen Watorik, and that is the name of my consulting company, Colleen Watorik. Watorik, fun fact,
Yes.
means Tuesday in Polish, which is
Nice.
kind of fun. So you think I would have called it like, Tuesday consulting and made it easy on people, but no, I didn't.
You're
Here,
Tuesday's
Colleen.
girl.
Colleen, spell
That's
your last
right.
name for us.
It's my name. Here it is.
That's awesome.
So some of the work that I do is I work with startup businesses or fledgling businesses that are just trying to gain some traction. and I help them figure out how to get business. And usually that's on more on the tech side of things. That's where most of my consulting is. My tagline is really dream it, do it, because I firmly believe that if you have this inkling in your heart that you've always wanted to do that one thing, it's because that's kind of your calling, and you should really honor that. So that's part of my life's work, is to do that and make sure that all the women that I meet that are in tech stay in tech and slay their careers.
That's right. Or become pilots, right?
Well, or you could do it. You could do it all. You could do both.
Or CEOs. I mean,
Yeah.
I listened to you. You told me, Colleen, you said, I heard you when you said, why doesn't the EA just become a CEO?
There you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
totally. Right. Well, because especially, I mean, EAs have all the skills. I never understood that.
Yeah.
They're juggling all
I'm
this
married
stuff.
to one. I know it is the
Oh,
case.
yeah.
Yes.
We are
This person
absolutely
that person this.
We are managers,
You've
absolutely.
got to be running the
She
show.
keeps my life going
Yeah.
and threatens to end it. So she's on both sides.
Oh,
Yeah.
now. So that's me.
Devon, I'm sorry. Go right on ahead. Let us know what you're doing and where we can find you.
My company is called Zapfire. It's meaning diamond in the rough, or it's called Zap Hire, fast hire. You can find me at www.zapfire.com. My email is devan@zapfire.com. I've launched the first app already, so it's in the App Store. This is the first live interactive video networking. Considered, I fondly call it to my kids, it's TikTok for professionals. Don't use it. It's only 12 plus. But you can live stream, you can post videos, you can interact with videos. It's completely video platform. Hopefully, if I can break the glass, it can be the LinkedIn on videos at one point. But it's already in App Store. I'm launching on Google soon, and also looking to launch a streaming TV channel soon as well. So that's going to be launching soon.
All right.
You know what, Kelly? I didn't give my website because I just totally.
Well, that's the one. Yes, that's exactly the one.
Okay.
All right, cool.
See if you recognize somebody else on there.
Yeah, he's going to be there.
Shameless plug.
Right. No, we're not promoting here.
No,
Yes,
not at all.
please.
I did just want to I did not give my website address. I can be found on LinkedIn, obviously, at ADP Virtual Assistant, at April Patterson on LinkedIn as well. And my website address is www.adpva.com.
All right, and that's
There we
80.
go. 80, P as in Peter, V as in Victor, A.com. Yeah.
All righty, guys. I want to thank all of you for all the amazing information and knowledge. It was 2 hours. Some of you fell asleep a little bit, but it's okay. It was still wonderful. I loved having everyone on here because I feel like I just got educated and I get it for free. So that's awesome. For everyone who's listening, paying attention, we will have this available in just a little bit right on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you go onto YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. YouTube said at some point they will pay me for that. So until next week, where I believe we have former NFL player Marquise Ogden, I want to bid everyone adieu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Oh no, not you guys. You guys stay on. You're gonna have to watch my cheesy outro first.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Ta-da!